Rain against the tin is a steady rhythmic hum. Up here beneath the rafters, up here beneath the rafters where the winter light has come. Drag a cedar box from the shadows of the floor, a heavy sweetwood scent drifting through the attic door. It's the kind of quiet place where the years refuse to fade, just a collection of the simple debts a working man has paid. And the value isn't measured in the ink upon the page, but in the unseen architecture of a life spent on this stage. Treasures kept in darkness, far from any prying eye, a record of the mountain rain and how it passes by. I unfold a calendar with every day marked out, reminders of the harvest of the mouths that had to be fed. A church bulletin from July folded into a little square, back when Sunday morning stillness felt like a whispered prayer. A grocery receipt for flour and simple basic needs, a harvest tally for the family before the winter weeds, keeping the hearth fire burning against the coming weeds. And I'm seeing through the eyes of a man who held the line, putting every scrap of iron into keeping this home fine. It's not the gold word of boasting, just the sweat upon his brow. Everything I didn't notice then, I'm understanding now. Notes scribbled on the backside, promises for tasks to do. Now the weight of all these papers is a heavy sacred thing, knowing how he held the winter back to let the summer sing. A legacy of service etched in pencil mark and stain, a quiet steady harvest grown through decades of the rain. But he was building up and I walked past the lessons in his hand. How many times did I fail to see the working of the land? But in the unseen architecture of a life spent on the stage, he left a map of mercy in the things that he held dear. Now the attic's getting warmer and the winter sky's clear, just wood and paper and the love he left behind. Everything I needed to know. Wipers tick a steady rhythm on the old curved glass, cutting lanes through the white breath of the bottomland grass. Rainwater's gathered in the ditches where the light turns gray, driving past the pastures where the ghost fog wants to stay. Just a tired rancher in a truck that's earned its rest, following a compass pointing deep inside my chest. Oh, it takes a winter of your own to see the seed, to know that character is everything a man will ever need. It wasn't in the profit or the timber that we kept, it was in the promises he honored while the world slept. A man is measured by the mercy that he gives, long after he stops drawing breath. That is how he lives. That is how he lives. I remember drought years when the creek bed ran to bone. He'd haul a trailer full of feed and never claim his own, fixing fence lines for a neighbor who had lost his only hand, giving up his Sundays just to help a stranger stand. Why he'd give the shirt right off his back, thought he's just trading gold for pebbles in the track. Now I see that grit is found in hands that hold on tight, but kindness is the lantern that can lead you through the night. He didn't need a statue or a name up on a gate, just a handshake and a promise and the will to carry weight. Consistency is courage when the rain starts falling down, building up a kingdom far away from any town. Far away from any town. brick schoolhouse is waking through the thinning of the haze, and I'm standing at the threshold of my father's final days. 72 winters have carved the path I tread, finding all the wisdom in the quiet things he said. The greatest gift he left me wasn't silver, steel, or deed. It was the way he planted hope inside another's need, inside another's need. Thank you for the example, for the hands that never tired. Thank you for the legacy in every soul you hired, for the humility that whispered while the world was shouting loud, for the peace you found in service when you weren't part of the crowd. The sun is found in service when you weren't part of the crowd. The sun is finally breaking through the heavy autumn cloud. The lessons of the Father make the Spirit feel so proud. I'm passing on the wisdom to the ones inside the hall, that the long way home by how you treat them when they fall. Leggy is found in the tracks you leave behind. After 70-some summers, I finally come back home to a valley full of timber where the cottonwoods grown. I found a dusty rolled top sitting quiet in the hall, with the sun through the window making shadows on the wall. And there, in the hollow of a doorway in the rear, was a white envelope hiding, waiting through the years. I saw my daddy's hand write, the ink was fading thin, telling things he couldn't say when the evening work began. He wrote about the harvest and the way, he wrote about the harvest and the way the river flows, and how love is sometimes carried in the things nobody knows. Yeah, he said he made his errors, but he gave me every beat of a heart that struggled onward through the summer's dust and heat, through the summer's dust and heat. He wrote about the railroads and the signal on the line, and how character is measured when the weather isn't fine. He spoke about the bottomland and family ties that stay, even when the miles and decades carry everything away. He told me he was proud of how I turned out to be a man. I wish I'd heard those whispers back when I was in the sand. I saw my daddy's hand write, the ink was fading thin, telling things he couldn't say when the evening work began. He wrote about the harvest and the way, he wrote about the harvest and the way the river flows, and how love is sometimes carried in the things nobody knows. Yeah, he said he made his errors, but he gave me every beat of a heart that struggled onward through the summer's dust and heat, of a heart that struggled onward. I folded up the paper and I placed it in my vest. A burden that I carried finally laid down to its rest. The gold upon the hayfield is a different kind of light, knowing that his courage is the thing that makes me right. I'm leaving this old valley with a pocket full of grace, finally seeing clearly through the shadows of his face, shadows of his face. Just a letter in a drawer, love was here all along. The salt air's drying out the floorboards of this kitchen room. The storms have finally drifted past, gone quiet in the gloom. I'm walking through the back way where the screens are rusted thin, and caught the jingle of the metal where the days begin. A set of keys still hanging on the hook beside the frame, and they weren't just steel, they were the weight of a promise kept, a promise kept. Watching over everyone while the rest of the county slept. While they slept, He didn't need a podium or a speech to make it clear. Showed the iron when the trouble drew near. Responsibility is a burden that a good man likes to hold, keeping the family together against the coming cold. I see him early mornings when the sky was bruised and gray, loading up the heavy tools to help clear the debris away, checking on the elderly, mending the sagging shed with a piece of twine and patience. He didn't twine impatience in the words he never said. He just carried all the answers in the lines upon his face. Strength isn't measured by the volume of your sound, measured by your sound. It's in the steady rhythm of your feet upon the ground, on the ground. Dependability's the legacy that outlasts all the rain. A quiet, selfless harvest born way. It's the work that you provide, leaving all your ego on the other side of pride. I walk the miles he walked now, carried gears and heavy hose, learning why he kept them polished in the rows where he arose. I'm the one who wakes up early, I'm the one who answers calls, finding all the peace out, finding all the peace I need within these modest walls. The inheritance of service passed down through the hand. The strongest part of building up a house upon the sand. Hold on. It's the weight of the promise, it's the way that you hold a heart fire burn after the light is gone. Showing up for the neighbor and showing up for the kin, knowing that the life you give is how you really win. I'll leave them hanging for the next soul to find. Pine straws dry beneath the boots I finally filled, walking past the timber frame the time and rain have chilled. He never used a notebook or a calendar to keep the score, just a silver ring of keys hanging quiet by the back screen door. Just a silver ring's hanging quiet by the back screen door. Oh, they weren't just steel or brass to keep the world away. They were the weight of every promise that he lived throughout the day. The gate, the truck, the timber shed, a lesson in his palm, a life of showing up of every storm and calm. Every storm and calm. I remember when the coast winds blew the fences to the ground. He was the first voice in the dark, the only honest sound, helping neighbors mend the roofs and haul the water through the rain. Helping neighbors mend the roofs and haul the water through the rain. Giving everything he had to help the family hide the pain. And they weren't just steel or brass to keep the world away. They were the weight of every promise that he lived throughout the day. The gate, the truck, the timber shed, a lesson in his palm, a life of showing up of every storm and calm. Every storm and calm. Now the sun is dipping low and the autumn breeze is high. I see my own reflection in the gold of that October sky. I'm the one who wakes before the light, the one who mends the gate, realizing quiet service is the only way to carry weight. Just keys on the wall, just a life well spent. Yeah, that's what he meant. What he meant. The maze of shadows stretches long and thin, past the place where the year's first frost begins. Hymns groan against the dry, cold air, finding all the tools resting where they were. A glove left open on the cedar peg, dust motes dancing where the evening light is begged. He never wasted breath on how to live. He simply showed me what a life could give. The walls are lined with years of quiet trade, the finest foundation that a man ever made. Tighten the cinch until the leather sings, understanding rhythm that the winter bringing. We'd fix the fence before the livestock froze, how to stop a disaster before the trouble grows. He didn't preach a right or talk a wrong. He just showed me how to keep the harness strong. Now the wisdom is the marrow in my bone, a harvest gathered from the seeds he'd sown. It wasn't in the talk or the stories that he told, it was in the patience as the days turn gold. Find the ledger on the workbench pine, measurements of seasons, a steady measure true, a simple reminder of the good we have to do. So I am the light that guides the way now, so I am the light that guides the way now, holding to the promise of the heavy, broken plow, a legacy of grace etched in wood and in the grain, stronger than the winter and longer than the pain, passing on the quiet strength of someone else's hand. Everything he planted, standing tall across the land. Click the latch and leave the lamp behind. The stubble fields are harvested, the sky is turning gray, the fairground gates are locked and barred, the crowds have gone away. I'm walking through the sawdust, past the pens where cattle stood. The silence in the grandstand makes the marrow in my bones feel good. It's been a dozen years or more since I walked this hollow ground. The echo of my own two boots is the only living sound. I used to crave the purple silk, the satin and the prize. I wanted all the judges just to look into my eyes. But he was standing in the shadows, holding tight the lead. He didn't care for glory, he didn't care for greed. He told me that the ribbon doesn't measure who you are, it's the dignity you carry when you're standing near the bar. The morning sun would rise on us, all scrubbed and bright with hope. We spent the nights in training, checking knots on every rope. I saw the kids from town arriving, looking polished, looking grand. I wanted to outshine them, to be the best within the land. He watched me check the grooming, watched me frantic, watched me sweat. He said, son, you're chasing echoes that the wind is bound to get. final heat, the final turn, the disappointment burned me like the stubble when they burn. I threw my hat and walked away. I thought that I was shamed. He didn't offer comfort or a way that I was blamed. He just asked me if I congratulated the kid who took the win. That's when I felt the heavy weight of what was held within. The applause is just a vapor, it dissolves into the dark. The structure holds the memory of a life that isn't loud. I'm standing in the center, underneath the quiet. It was how I took the fall, it was how I took the fall. Standing in the emptiness, realizing that was all. The granulator silhouettes are fading in the west. I'm putting all the ghosts of competition down to rest. The sawdust is just dirt again, the ribbon's long since frayed. But it's me and the empty wooden roads and the long way home. Cold mountain air cuts the breath like a blade before the sharp angles of sunlight invade. The grass is all silver with winter's first touch in the valley where words never mattered that much. I spent 40 seasons just shouting for higher, chasing the heat of a high country fire. But I'm standing now where he stood on the line, when the work was just service and nothing was mine. He never wore a collar or stood up on the stage. He just kept the gravel sorted and turned a quiet page. I used to wonder why he wasted all his might on a fence no one would notice in the middle of the night. But significance is found in the things the hands have done, not the height of any shadow underneath the mountain sun. He cleared the drifts in March when the canyon was blocked, fixed every leaning rail until the cedar was locked. I was busy calling numbers in a world that moved too fast. He was building something solid that was meant to truly last. Now the families are coming and the morning dew is gone, and I see him in the greetings as the light comes breaking on. He never wore a collar or stood up on the stage. He just kept the gravel sorted and turned a quiet page. I used to wonder why he wasted all his might on a fence no one would notice in the middle of the night. But significance is found in the things the hands have done, not the height of any shadow underneath the mountain sun. The bell is ringing out now across the valley floor. It sounds like every morning that he walked through that old door. A man is more than money or the volume of his chest. He kept the pathways open when the world the people fed, with the service of his hands and the wisdom in his head. Dust rises on a mailbox road, same rust on the fender as before. Old bench seat is worn to the bone, a ghost in the corner by the door. I smell the grease and the Sunday air where the wheat fields bend like a gold leaf prayer. The world gets quiet when you learn to wait, like a dry creek bed in the summer heat. Integrity is just a simple gate, locked from the inside, bitter and sweet. You said the long way home is where you find what the road leaves behind. Repairing a fence line in the sun, hammering the silt till the wood stands true, hammering the silt till the wood stands true. You didn't say the work was never done, you just let me work right next to you. Patience is a seed in the fallow dirt, it only grows where the hard pans hurt. There's no shortcut to the man you become.
Shortcuts don't leave nothing to the hand.
Under the oak shade where we're from, building on the silt and the shifting sand. I see the church bells ringing in the light, weathered barns standing through the gale. Your quiet strength is my morning sight, the compass for a son who's found the trail. Responsibility is the truck I drive, keeping that family legacy alive. Keeping that legacy alive. And the long way home was never for the miles, it was just for the lessons in the shared space. Building a character in the silence of the smiles, walking with humility and walking with grace. Now I'm grateful for the road that you paved, for the character your silence saved. The engine's idling smooth. Yeah, the long way was the right way. I'm home. 72 winters have passed through these hills, and the red dirt is finally drinking its fill. I stepped through the doorway to latch up the gate when I saw it still hanging, a ghost of the lake. A tin-covered lantern all grease-stained and gray, right where my old man left it at the end of the day. I remembered the mornings, the frost on the hinge, and how I once saw it as just part of the binge of chores that never ended, the furrows he'd run underneath the pale moon or a blistering sun. He didn't just carry a spark in his hand, he carried the weight of the sky and the land. In the seasons of doubt, when the wells would run dry, he stayed steady as iron beneath the dark sky. It wasn't for glory or a name in the town, just a quiet devotion that wouldn't go down. He finished what started, he stood like an oak, and his love was the promise that his hands never broke. His love was the promise that his hands never broke. As a boy I wanted a path that was paved, where the sweat of the brow didn't have to be saved, where the sweat of the brow didn't have to be saved. But he'd look at the horizon where the clouds start to part, and he'd say that the field is just part of the heart. That faith is the shovel that digs through the grit, and character's only the way that you sit. When the harvest is thin and the winter is long, and you find the right rhythm in a different song. He didn't just carry a spark in his hand, he carried the weight of the sky and the land. In the seasons of doubt, when the wells would run dry, he stayed steady as iron beneath the dark sky. It wasn't for glory or a name in the town, just a quiet devotion that wouldn't go down. He finished what started, he stood like an oak, and his love was the promise that his hands never broke. His love was the promise that his hands never broke. I strike a match now and the wick starts to glow, flickering soft like a secret I know. The oil is just fuel and the glass is just skin, but it's the spirit inside standing tall at the door, that I'm carrying the light that he carried before. The rain has stopped falling, the fields breathe again, and the stars are appearing through the clouds in the glen. In the heart of the barn where the silver light gleams, a father's legacy lives in his dreams. white blanket rolls across the valley floor. I step across the threshold of the kitchen door. The frost is tracing lace along the window pane, and sitting there in shadow, just like it used to be, a simple piece of maple wood is waiting there for me. He didn't need the spotlight, didn't need to claim his share. He just found his measure in the cushion of that chair. Never sought the thunder, never had to lead the band, just held the weight of living in the palm of his hand. I recall the neighbors knocking when the nights turned long and cold, sharing all the worries that a kitchen hearth could hold. He didn't offer answers, didn't try to heal the stain. He just gave them room to breathe, chasing giants in the heat. Never saw the steady rhythm of his quiet folded feet, but wisdom isn't shouting from a mountain or a height. It's the way you keep the embers, it's the art of staying present, giving all you have to give, learning from the stillness just how to truly live. I've spent a lifetime mending, chasing sickness from the door. Now I'm back inside the valley where I learned the pull and lore. That chair's held a spirit that the years can't wear away, teaching me to listen to what the shadows have to say. Oh, the greatest gift he gave me wasn't silver, gold, or deed. It was the way he planted patience like a winter hardened seed. He showed me how to hover, how to stand and how to be, anchored in the presence for the ones who look to me. The snow is falling softly on the sill still. November air's got a bite, breathing wide in the hollows, climbing Miller's Ridge where the path of the past follows. The timber's gone skeletal oak, fingers scratching the gray, and the first winter dusting is washing the color away. I find the old grade where the hemlock shadows are deep, but the woods turned to punk and the climb's gotten rugged, and there's gaps in the ladder where the hemlock is rotted to bone, and one spot in the middle left vacant and jagged and lone. I remember the tumble, the skin off a knee, when I would ask him to fix it. I'd ask him again and again, why leave a man falling, why leave such a treacherous gap? He'd just tip his hat, ignore the whole mountainous trap. I spent my youth cussing that empty, unyielding space, never knowing the lesson was etched on the mountain's own face. I was rail yard impatient, I wanted the tracks leveled smooth, wanted it without tremors, wanted a path I could soothe. Watch me adjust, watch me watch where I placed every boot, learning the tangle of rock and the strength of the root. He never did hammer, he never did level the tread. The rush of the blood, the caution required for the rise, keeping your spirit awake, keeping the fear from your eyes. Now the suit of the engine is gone from the crease of my palm, and I stand on this ridge and of that one riser untied. It was the gift of attention, we left that one riser untied. It was the gift of attention with nowhere for vanity to hide. Cause when you're looking down, you ain't looking at where you might go, and you miss all the warmth in the valley that hides in the snow. The flakes fall like feathers on cedar, on stone, and on coal, a blanket of silence that settles right deep in the soul. He didn't give answers, he gave me the ground to explore, and I'm learning to stand in the gap, and I'm asking no more. Yeah, I remember the tumble, the skin off a knee went out, but I'm thankful for gaps that forced me to stumble again. It wasn't a failure, it wasn't a treacherous trap, it was the weight of the mountain map and a fold of the map. I don't cuss the space with a rough, jagged, unyielding face. I know that the presence is found in the slow, careful pace. Train whistles calling far off where the gorge starts to bend. The humidity is heavy, sticky on the skin. I'm back where the currents and the limestone begin. The sycamores are wider than the ones I knew as kin, just roots and gray bark holding the river in. I found a flat rock near the edge of the bend, tucked underneath where the silt used to end. Folded a blade, rusted handle black and worn, from a summer long past before I was born to the thorn. He didn't dig in the gravel, he didn't fret or mourn, he just watched the sun sinking beneath the field of corn. I expected a shout or a search for the steel, but he just leaned back and let the river reveal that the time in our pockets ain't worth a single dime compared to the moments we share in the prime of our time. Spent my life building spans of concrete and iron, calculating load-bearing weights like a line. But the sturdiest bridges aren't made out of beams, they're the evenings we held while we drifted in dreams. I was just a boy, wanting tools, wanting stuff, but his empty hand reaching was always enough. He taught me that objects was always a corn. I expected a shout or a search for the steel, but he just leaned back and let the river reveal that the time in our pockets ain't worth the single dime to the moments we share in the prime of our time. 60 years gone, washing away all the strain. Wasn't just losing a knife in the clay, he was choosing to stay in the light of the day. That blade was a lesson he that tied, that the love in a father doesn't seek, doesn't hide. The weight of the world lifted up from your heart, I'll tuck it back under, let the river take hold. Some things are just shadows, but the presence is gold. Yeah, the presence is gold, I'm leaving it here like I knew that he would. Just the water and the hum of the heat, a bridge to the memory, still complete. The air is thick and heavy where the marsh grass starts to lean. The thunder's moving eastward, leaving all the sky washed clean. I'm walking through the parlor where the dust begins to settle, where the dust begins to settle, and caught the silver of a frame of tarnished metal. It's pinned above the mantel where the smoke used to rise, looking back at me with unforgotten, steady eyes. And he taught me how to measure, how to hold the grain in line, how to save the good wood for the moments that define It was never just the cypress or the water on the hull. It was learning how to weather every storm and every lull. Patience is the marrow and the promise is the keel. Everything he gave me was the only thing that's real. We spent the summers quiet in the shed beside the tide. He never offered speeches or kept nothing tucked inside. He just handed me the chisel, let me learn the way it bit. If you fail to plumb the center, then the vessel doesn't fit. He taught me how to listen to the shifting of the wind, to forgive the wood for warping and the sailor for his sin. He was building more than transport for the river and the sea. He was smoothing out the jagged, hidden edges inside me. If you keep the joint tight, you can weather any gale. If you mend the little tears, then you rarely ever fail. Craftsmanship is humble, it's a language you don't speak. It's the strength you hold inside you when you're feeling mostly weak. Just like the love he offered, just like the lessons taught, it survived the driving rain because of all the care it caught. I see him in the details, in the finish, in the line. The man he helped me fashion is the legacy I find. How to save the good wood for the moments that define. He was building more than transport for the river and the sea. He was shaping up the soul of everything I'd come to be. The greatest gift he carved was the promise that I keep. In the quiet of the morning while the weary world is asleep, just me and the frame. Everything stays, everything holds. The sun is dipping down behind the western peaks tonight, leaving shadows on the mesa in the cold and fading light. I stepped across the drift to find the latch on the old shop door, and found your heavy gloves still hanging right where they were before. The last light in the workshop was a lantern in your hand. You taught me how to walk across this unforgiving land. Never needed any sermons, never needed any show. Just the quiet way you worked and the things I came to know. I found the handle on the spade worn smooth as river stone, and realized how many miles you walked out here alone. You said shortcuts make for longer roads when things begin to bend, that a man should do the work right even when he's near the end. The last light in the workshop was a lantern in your hand. You taught me how to walk across this unforgiving land. Never needed any sermons, never needed any show. Just the quiet way you worked and the things I came to know. I found the ledger hidden where the saddle always sat, with notes on weather horses and 100 things like that. Then the final page in shaky ink, a note about being kind, a reminder that a rancher leaves his character behind. The last light in the workshop was a lantern in your hand. You taught me how to walk across this unforgiving land. You built a better meant to show. Now I'm turning out the light, Dad, with nowhere left to go. Now I'm turning out the light, Dad, with nowhere left to go. Just the quiet way you worked, The light is out now, but the way is clear. Good night, Dad. The clouds have parted wide above the plains, swept clean by the temper of the turning year. Walking past the grain store through the lanes, finding the familiar wood that's waiting here. 3 generations smooth the grain right down. A simple plank that holds the history of this town. I used to wonder why he spent his Saturdays just sitting still, watching the horizon while the world was climbing up the hill. Thought he was just waiting for the clock to slowly win, but he was gathering the pieces that the busy folks left behind. I remember the farmer with the drought-tired hollow eyes, and the boy who went to service 'neath those foreign skies. They'd sit a spell and talk of debts and broken parts. He'd just nod his head and let them empty out their hearts. He didn't fix the engine, didn't offer up a plan. He just gave them room to breathe and showed he understood the man. Now I finally see the weight of what he gave away. It wasn't in the labor of the heat and dust of day, learning how to carry what we barely think we can. A community is woven not by mortar, brick, or stone, but by knowing that you're sitting there and never on your own. I took the spot this morning as the cottonwoods began to sway. A neighbor walked up slowly, needing just a word to say. I saw the light return to him the way it used to do, and realized the inheritance I'd finally moved into. It's not the gold of property that keeps the harvest true. It's teaching every neighbor how, so I'll keep the seat warm for the ones who need to stay, and pass the quiet wisdom that he planted here that day. Yeah, he taught me how to listen, taught me how to stay. Wind is a wild thing out in the sage, rattling dry leaves on a desolate stage. I'm walking the boundary, the high desert line, where the earth tastes like sulfur and needles of pine. My boot kicks the gravel, I pause by the wood, where the boundary is crooked, not straight as it should. Where the boundary is crooked, not straight as it should. And there in the timber, all jagged and red, are 3 rusted spikes where the temper was fed. Oh, the hammer was heavy, the iron was cold, a lesson in patience before I grew old. For every sharp word that I threw like a stone, a mark in the heart and a cut in the bone. Yeah, the metal comes out and the hammer is still, but the hole in the wood stays against a man's will. Against a man's will. I was 17, stubborn, with fire in my chest, thinking I knew what was better and best. He didn't raise voices, he didn't raise hands. He walked me out silent to these empty lands. He handed me iron, he pointed the post. Drive them in deep for the things that you boast. I hammered my fury, I hammered my pride, while the clouds turned to charcoal and darkened the side. Oh, the hammer was heavy, the iron was cold, a lesson in patience before I grew old. For every sharp word that I threw like a stone, a mark in the heart and a cut in the bone. Yeah, the metal comes out and the hammer is still, but the hole in the wood stays against a man's will. Against a man's will. Weeks went by slow and the rain washed the rust. He told me to pull them, turn steel into dust. I pried them all free, leaving jagged retreats, deep hollows that lingered where the grain often meets. I spent my life ranging, protecting the trees, learning the language of the high country breeze. And every time anger would rise in my throat, I'd think of that post and the words that I wrote. The thunder is rolling, the storm's almost here. Some gifts aren't silver, some gifts aren't gold. A testament etched in the stories I told. For every sharp word that I threw like a stone is a map of the seeds that my father had sown. Now the metal is gone and the hammer is still, but the character remains. The hammer is still, but the character remains. Against the world's will. Against the world's will. First drops of rain hit the dry, heated dust. Standing where the clover is encroaching on the dirt. The delta evening humidity is clinging to my shirt. The scoreboard is a skeleton of numbers from the past. The summer sun is fading and the shadows grow so vast. I can almost hear the crack of a wood bat in the breeze and see a silhouette standing beyond the cypress trees. My father never coached a kid or played a single inning. He just waited past the fence line, caring little about winning. He said the third base line is where you find the truth of who you are, not in the speed of the runner or the distance of the far. It's in the way you lose a game and look 'em in the eye. It's in the effort and the character you carry till you die. The diamond-faced a winner, and the applause will all grow thin, but how you treat your brother is the only way to win. I taught those boys to turn the double play and hit the curveball cold, but the stories that I'm hearing now are the ones that must be told. One became a farmer, one became a deacon in the town. They didn't win a trophy, a neighbor in the bottomland or a stranger at the door. They learned it past the dugout, standing by the gravel floor. They learned that being steady in the dugout or the field meant more than any record that a summer game could yield. He said the third base line is where you find the truth of who you are, not in the speed of the runner or the distance of the far. It's in the way you lose a game and look 'em in the eye. It's in the effort and the character you carry till you die. The diamond-faced a winner and the applause will all grow thin, but how you treat your brother is the only way to win. The grandstand's just a skeleton, the fence is falling down, but the lessons that he taught us are the foundation of this town. It wasn't about the strikes we threw or the shutouts on the mound. It was the quiet love he planted in this rain-washed, hallowed ground. Soft humming. Game's over now, but the lesson stays right here. Mist is clinging heavy to the pines this morning light. It holds the secrets of the dawn and shadows of the night. I found her waiting by the reeds, just where she's always laid. cedar hull of memory in the place that he had made. She's weathered gray as river stone and scarred by sand and reef, a vessel built for silent work and carrying my belief. He taught me that the current doesn't bow to any man. You gotta learn the language that is written in the land. The answer ain't a map you hold or something you can race. It's the patience that you cultivate just looking at the face of a lake that's keeping quiet till the wind decides to blow. He said the wisdom's in the waiting, just letting go and grow. I remember how he'd point his hand to ripple, shift and bend, a dozen ways to read the sky before the river's end. I wanted compass points and charts, I wanted speed and line. He'd just sit there with the paddle, keeping steady, keeping fine. No lectures from the wooden seat, no heavy-handed rules, just a quiet observation holder, something you can race. It's the patience that you cultivate just looking at the face of a lake that's keeping quiet. He said the wisdom's in the waiting, just letting go and grow. I push off now into the gray, the bow cut soft and clean. The fog is lifting slow and gold, revealing all the green. And looking back across the wake, I finally see it clear. The father that I thought I lost is walking with me here. It wasn't about the fish we caught or how we broke the trail. It was how we stood together when the north wind started to wail. You gotta learn the language that is written in the land. The answer ain't a map you hold or something you can race. It's the grace that you allow yourself within this holy space. It's the grace that you allow yourself within this holy space of a lake that's keeping quiet till the sun begins to show. I finally hear the lesson now, I finally let it go, just the way he always said it'd be. Let it be. The frost has kissed the hickory in the hollow down the way. The air is sharp as iron on this early autumn day. I'm walking through the briars where the timber meets the lane to find the patch he planted before the winter rain. The soil is tucked beneath the leaves, a heavy dark loam bed, where he kept his quiet counsel in the words he never said. Some things only ripen when you leave them to the deep. A harvest ain't for grabbing, it's a promise that you keep. You tell me that the patience is the hardest road to hoe. You gotta wait on seasons that you're never gonna know. Seasons you're never gonna know. I was hurried in my 20s, thought the world was mine to take. Wanted grand and sudden answers, wanted waves I didn't make. But he was working steady, putting calcium to ground. While I was looking upward, he was looking all around. He taught me how to measure out the time and what we yield. Not the noise upon the hilltop, but the health of every field. Some things only ripen when you leave them to the deep. A harvest ain't for grabbing, it's a promise that you keep. You tell me that the patience is the hardest road to hoe. You gotta wait on seasons that you're never gonna know. Wait on seasons you'll never know. I pulled back all the tangle of the ivy and the vine and found the heirloom stalks were standing, holding every line. Deep roots that defied the years of coming and of going. He taught me how to grow by showing me the way of knowing. If you stay within the hollow, you can weather every gale. The work you plan silent in silence is the work that cannot fail. Yeah, the work you plan in silence is the work that cannot fail. The legacy is growing on the other side of the trail. I'm just the final blossom of the seeds he put to bed, living out the wisdom in the words he never said. I'm finally seeing what he knew. The garden's ready.